Ladies and gentlemen, I have a very special show for each and every one of you today. Our guest today is revered as the leading expert on OPCAT and has been working with the operational code since 2018, before most of you even got into crypto. He is also part of the Escrip, which is a full-stack Web3 smart contract development platform for Bitcoin. And as you know, OPCAT is a hot topic currently within the Bitcoin ecosystem. And there are some things that do need some clearing up, such as, can OPCAT really bring programmability to Bitcoin? Can OPCAT provide Bitcoin smart contract automation and things of this nature? Well, there's nobody else in the world who would be able or to be more perfect fit for this interview to answer your burning questions than our current guest, Yahweh. I just want to say, Yahweh, thank you so much for making this happen. You know, Yahweh, I made some videos on OPCAT, and people are thinking I'm the expert in OPCAT because of my video. I said, no. Let me find the leading expert so he could give you the actual facts. So I just want to say, man, thank you so much for making this happen. I know you're very busy and, time is very valuable to you. So I really appreciate that.
Thanks for having me here. It's a pleasure.
Absolutely. Guys, please share this live stream. We are currently live on YouTube, and we're also currently live right now on Twitter. Do share this. We're about to get right at it. Also, near the end of the stream, what we would do is we would take some of your questions, okay? So let's get right to it. There we go. Everything's up and running. Okay, so how long have you been involved with OPCAT, and what really drew your interest to it? Because I feel as though it was something that, that's spoken of, but it's like a real niche. So I just want to know, how come you were gravitated towards OPCAT all the way back since 2018, I believe?
Yeah, a little bit of background about me. So I'm a founder of this company called Escrip. So it's, as you rightly mentioned, is a dev platform for Bitcoin-like chains. In Ethereum, you probably heard of something like a Infra or Alchemy or QuickNode. We are pretty much the equivalent, but for Bitcoin chains. Okay, so I first got into the crypto, in 2016. I was working, at Facebook. I was doing some mining in my garage, all the typical nerd stuff. And then, 2017, I pretty much got the crypto bug to say, and, decided, hey, let me do something interesting in this space. So that's how 2017, there's like two big things in the crypto history. One is the so-called ICO boom. Everybody is launching some coins, getting rich. I missed that. But anyway, I was more interested in the technical side, or of Bitcoin, because there's a huge like a scaling debate back then going on, and I kind of follow it, and then I think, oh, okay, how come I never heard about Bitcoin? Why is everybody still obsessed with Bitcoin? Now we have Ethereum, and then we even have Ethereum killer EOS. We have all this programming stuff, but then I did kind of like a dive down a little bit, almost like into the rabbit hole. I found, hey, looks like Bitcoin can also do programming stuff. It also has this virtual machine, but it just some of them is disabled. And then in 2018, I think that's when I got seriously, involved with some of the opcode, because a lot of people know that after there's a split in 2017, there's a fork of called Bitcoin Cash, which we enabled, I think most, if not all, opcode in 2008. So I was just tinkering with it, and then I was finding, hey, this thing is too complicated. Even I'm a nerd myself, but all these opcodes, op-add, op-cat, or whatnot, is just it's very difficult even for developers like me to actually program anything on top. So that's why I feel, hey, maybe something, it's like Ethereum, right? EVM, you also have all kinds of opcode, but most people I know of, I have programmed myself, is in some high level language like Solidity, or in EOS is some like a C++. I thought, hey, why is nobody doing this? So maybe I should do it. That's how I came up with the idea of Escrip. It starts as a high level programming language. You can think about it. It's like a JavaScript or Solidity but for Bitcoin.
Okay.
So that's how I first get into the opcodes world. Back then, nobody has been playing with this. So
Yeah.
I'm really surprised people now are interested in this very nerdy topic. OPCAT, OPAD.
No,
Yeah,
absolutely, absolutely. That's like back in the good old boomer days of 2016,
yeah,
2017, right? The ICO, the rise of ICOs and all that kind of stuff. That's very fascinating. But something that really like, kind of like comes to my mind is with OPCAT, I believe it was disabled in 2010 by Satoshi. Why do you think there
yeah.
is like all of a sudden this resurgence of OPCAT, OPCAT? Now, like I don't want to answer for you, but I'm led to believe maybe the rise of ordinals, tokens on Bitcoin. We see the limitations we have there, but please, we would love to hear from you yourself. The question once again is, why do you think there's a resurgence with OPCAT currently right now, ever since Satoshi disabled it in 2010?
Yeah, I think I totally agree with you. When there's a first split, we have BCH, and later on we have Bitcoin SV. So I was mostly involved with Bitcoin SV. So until early last year, because simply because there's not much developer or development going on in BTC space. I want to support it, but then there's not much. It's like most people they're just interested in buying it and then using it as a stock value. There's not much development activity, but everything changed from my perspective. So I think it was early last year, 2023, with the release of ordinals, and then people are coming back and
Yeah.
say, wait a minute, oh, Bitcoin can do tokens, really? And then it brings a lot of resurgence of development
I'm sure a
activity.
guy. Sorry to interrupt, but I'm sure a guy like yourself, you're waiting for this moment since 2018. You're messing with OpCat. You're like, when is it? When is my breakthrough year? This is your breakthrough year. It has to be, right? So that's music to your ears.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's good for our business. So a lot of people seems interested, become interested in this topic. Which is let's say a little bit overwhelming to me because we have been building this thing since like forever, and then early from this year, I think people talk about oh, once you can do tokens, right? What's the logical next step Bitcoin can do? Of course, smart contracts. And how do you enable more complicated smart contracts? And this OPCAT is like this very special OPCAT. So for people, just trying to going back a little bit of like a history so people can understand the context.
Please.
So when Bitcoin first released, it has this virtual machine. Like I call it Bitcoin virtual machine. I may be the guy who termed it. If you go to my blog, I used it like in 2019. Seems some people are using it right now. Anyway, uh,
Mhm.
so it has this virtual machine with a set of opcodes. It's not me. You go back to the first release version in 2009. Okay, it's the opcodes. That's about, I would say about 80 or so opcodes. I don't remember exactly, but don't quote me on it. It's
Mhm.
about 80-ish. And then later on, as you rightly point, so in 2010, Satoshi disabled some of them. For example, OPCAT, right? Mostly because of the security concerns. If you do OPCAT,
Okay.
let's say, right,
Yeah.
OPCAT is just, as the name says, it's just concatenate two things. So if you keep doing this, it's going to blow up the memory for all the, even if you have the biggest computer in the world, it's going to blow up. So out of caution, I think that's why he wants to disable it. I think it's temporarily. Maybe later on we
Yeah.
can fix it, right?
Yeah.
It's because there's no time. So since early this year, yeah, for reasons I don't quite understand, as a lot of people, especially in the Taproot wizard, doing the quantum cat
Yeah.
stuff,
That's
are
right.
bring a lot of attention
They
back.
did.
Hey, maybe it's time to bring some of the disabled OPCAT back. This OPCAT. Okay, here's the thing: it's not something new. It was there. It was put there in the original code by Satoshi
That's
himself.
right. That's right.
But it's not something very new like
Yeah.
OpCTV or of
Yeah.
check
It's
template
not a new.
verify.
It's not a third party new proposal. This was like from
Yeah,
Satoshi himself. Yeah. I think I did
yeah,
some reading on that reason, and they mentioned DDoS attacks could have been a problem in the
yes.
earlier days. I'm guessing now, since that the network has matured, the hash rate much more miners, more decentralized. I think maybe that has something to do with it. Where if this was enabled, and I believe that has to go through consensus. Is that through the miners or the community, or how does that work for OpCat on layer one if it was to be enabled one day?
Oh, I think yeah, that's like a difficult question. Yeah, I think it's like all the previous upgrades. I think, for example, Segway or Taproot. By the way, Taproot introduced this, like, let's say, squid limit, and also for each element it cannot be arbitrarily big. So that kind of like alleviate the, let's say, the potential risk of OPCAT.
Right.
I think how and how, whether it will be activated, I think to me it's kind of like a rough consensus
Yeah.
among the community. I mean, between different players, you have developers, you have businesses, you have, let's say, regular users. I think they all got a say. That's why it's not. I feel the process is a little bit of unclear to me. There's no recipe for how to activate. So I'm really it's like we are in this process. I'm really interested to see how it plays out. Yeah.
Yeah, very good, very good.
So for us, we want to offer a lot of tools and examples. So just show what kind of applications that can be built based on OPCAT.
That
Instead of just
actually,
talk about it. Yeah.
yeah, that actually brings us to our next question, which is the programmability. Is this just hype, right? Like, what type of programmability? Maybe I'm using the wrong word, I don't know, but that's the terminology that's being thrown around when associated with OPCAT. What type of programmability can we really see if OPCAT's enabled, whether that's on a Bitcoin compatible chain or that's Bitcoin itself? Like, what could it really do? Is it things that we see on Ethereum, liquidity pools? Is it things like, automation of, I don't know, secure wallets? If somebody was to get access to your private keys, try to drain you, you could send that quickly to a safe wallet. I don't know, right? Like, what type of programmability could we realistically expect from OPCAT if it's enabled?
Okay. So here's mind-blowing fact. Okay. When I say that when I say it's fact, because we release a lot of open source code there. You can go there and replicate it yourself on Bitcoin Signet. Okay, today, which uh, opcode is enabled. So the easiest way to understand this, in today's world, because of the disabled opcats, so Bitcoin so-called smart contract is not Turing complete. Bitcoin on layer one. Okay,
Okay.
so once you have this tightly opcode, you make it so-called Turing complete. In
Yeah.
layman's term, you can program arbitrarily complex,
Okay.
smart contracts using this opcode on layer one. So another way to put it, anything that you can do it on other so-called smart contract platform like Ethereum or Solana, you can do the same thing. Everything they can do, you can put it on Bitcoin layer one.
That's crazy.
Okay. So we
That's
are not talking about efficiency or cost or
yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
know uh, block time.
Strictly
Just
programmability.
it's program. You can program anything, arbitrary anything. You can do. Okay. So this is not theoretical. We've been, as you said, we play with a lot of like a Bitcoin like blockchains. We have implemented all these kind of applications already. People using our tools. It's not something just hypothetical. It's
Interesting.
already happened. We just need to,
You know
if
this
and when this
firsthand. Sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead. Yahweh.
if and when opcode is brought back, the easy way you can always port all those existing apps back to the Bitcoin main chain. Yes.
Very, very interesting there. I feel as though, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Yahweh, I believe like the newcomers coming to the space, let's just say somebody first heard about crypto, Bitcoin in 2024, and the culture today is that how Bitcoin can do programmability. It's not supposed to do these things. It's supposed to be small blocks. It's supposed to be like slow. It's supposed to be all these things. Like maybe that's why today there's so much misunderstanding with OPCAT because people already have these things driven in their heads from whatever others are saying today. Do you think that is sort of misleading to newcomers? Because this is like what people say. I wouldn't necessarily call it FUD, but I would call it misinformation from the masses when it comes to OPCAT. And they're saying, well, it could only do little things, a little bit more, advanced than what we could currently do on Bitcoin with, partially signed Bitcoin transactions, right? We can manipulate that to do certain time locks. But they're saying that how OPCAT, it can't do much more than what Layer 1 has. What would you say to those people, since you've been doing it yourself?
I wouldn't say misinformation. A lot of time it's just I would say not misunderstanding, but it's just not many people know what this thing can do.
Yeah.
Actually, it's the people posting, even including people posting quantum cats profile pictures. I think a lot of people just it's like, hey, seems a lot of people, it's like a new laser eye. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah,
like, hey, why
exactly.
is somebody putting that on?
Yeah, yeah,
Trendy. I just put it on. I don't even know what a opcat stands for, but it's cool.
yeah.
But here's the thing. I think it just the truth is just, to me, It's just not many people have played with it, so they don't understand the huge implication. It's just simply, Bitcoin, even for ordinals, right? You are you are kind of like you're just putting dumb data on the blockchain
Yeah,
and all the meta protocols. Mostly, you are at most using Bitcoin as like a data availability layer, but you are not using the opcodes. You are using almost like for example, ordinal, you use some of opcodes, but only as an envelope. The whatever is in the second envelope is not executed. So I think this is just new to most people,
yeah,
including all the people who's
yeah,
advocating for the OPCAT. It's just something new. I think it's when it's something new, you really need people
yeah,
who have a lot tons of experience try to explain, and then it's up to you to decide, hey, whether this is this hype
yeah,
or this is really something that's going to be big.
exactly.
I
I
think,
mean,
I every day I wake up, there's something new popping up in Bitcoin space. I think, a lot of time is hype. So that's why you don't see me working on some other, let's say layer two side chains. I'm mostly passionate about OPCAT because this really unlocks the huge potential. It just makes Bitcoin compete on the
yeah.
programmability side by side with other leading blockchains.
Yes, no, well said. Well said. I feel as though, yeah, people, they're just misinformed, disinformation, whether that's purposely embedded disinformation, who knows? But yeah, I mean, it can be something new if it already was part of Bitcoin from, the beginning, right? From the man himself. So that's what
Yeah,
we could tell
yeah.
those naysayers. Now, when it comes to OPCAT, what's the security and scalability like? Does that have anything to do with OPCAT? And you could maybe that's a two question there: scalability and also security. Does OPCAT have some sort of like security advancements and also scalability too, or probably not for scalability? I don't know.
Short answer, yes, for both. Okay, let me explain. So OpCat, you can think about is a building block, it's a Lego block. It can be combined with all other existing opcode to, bring more, let's say, flexible smart contracts. And then you can use all those smart contracts to help with both scalability and security. For example, scalability. I think I was on audio show a few days ago, and I kind of leaked this breaking news. So we are partnering, Escrip, we're partnering with, Stockwell, which is a
Oh,
leading ZK rollup,
oh wow.
provider on Ethereum, on maybe some other chains. So we are working together to bring ZK, especially their variant of ZK knowledge called the ZK Stark,
Yes, yes, of course,
back
yes.
to Bitcoin.
Wow.
But we need the opcode, which is only one we need is opcat to make that a reality. Okay, so if you heard about the ZK rollup, so that's like the number one scalability for other, mostly for Ethereum blockchains. So we can definitely use that to bring scalability
Wow.
and help them to scale Bitcoin main chain. And in terms of security, I think it's another way of looking at this. So because now you can have full functional smart contract absolutely complex. So you can design all kinds of like a smart contract to secure your Bitcoin. For example, number one, what people talk about is vault, right? So instead of just put it in some address, and if people
Yeah.
access to your private key and your money is gone, you can have like a cool down period. Hey, it's like, hey, if you want to withdraw some amount, you have to cool down, let's say 24 minutes, hours. And if you notice your key has been stolen, you can use another key to, kind of like stop an attack. So it brings more type of, let's say, enhancement to Bitcoins. Yeah.
Very nice. Very nice. This is crazy. It's almost like all the other blockchains wouldn't matter once this goes on. Like those
Uh,
blockchains that have
yeah,
smart
that's,
contract. I mean, the scalability
yeah,
part. Sorry, the faster blocks maybe, right? Some people might want to
yeah.
choose another one because of that. I don't think that could really be changed, but yeah, nonetheless, it still opens up the doors to a lot of different enhancements to it that will be utilized on layer one too. So that is very awesome. So you mentioned vaults. What is covenants when it comes to OPCAT? I hear this terminology quite often. Is that another potential
Yeah.
use case, or is that a part of the opcode? What exactly is covenants?
I think it is one of the most important use cases, I would say, because that acts as a foundation or basis for a lot of other more complicated and useful contracts. So for people who have not heard about this covenant, so the easiest way to understand it. So for example, if I have some Bitcoin, I send to Francis, right? If after send you, you can spend it in whatever way you want, right? You can buy coffee, you can, I don't know, you can store it in some cold water. You can do it whatever you want. The covenant is just saying, hey, I put this, Bitcoin in this in ways. So even I send the Bitcoin to you, only you can spend it, but
Right.
there's some limitation on how you can spend it. For example, you cannot spend it, let's say, 3 weeks from now, or you can only send to a certain address. You
Right.
can basically you can constrain the receiver how he's going to spend the coins he received. Okay, place some constraint because normally without covenant, you can spend it arbitrarily, right? So the covenants, there are many different proposals to enable it. One of them is OPCTV. Some people even propose op check sig from stack. Different opcodes. But for me, my favorite way would be, hey, if you have OPCAT, you can bring back covenant and OPCAT. It's in the regional and simple. So yeah, I would personally I would prefer to bring up covenant back using OPCAT. And once you have covenant, you can build a lot of so-called Turing complete
Yeah. Nice,
smart
man.
contract on Bitcoin. The way is once you have covenant, you can have recursive version of covenant.
Wow.
So we have shown this on our blog. We have code there you can play with. So once you have recursive version of Covenant, you can so-called implement so-called state machines. Machines is like a theoretical concept, but if you look at all other Ethereum or Solana based on chain,
Yeah.
it's all like state machine on a high level. You just have a global state. Every transaction, brings the global state to the next. So conceptually, once you have state in Bitcoin smart contract, you can simulate, you can duplicate any functionality or any other smart contract blockchains.
Very nice, very nice. I have to ask a question here because it may be somewhat controversial for some people, but whenever we're
Okay.
dealing with smart contracts on other chains, there are potentials of hacks. Is
Yeah.
OPCAT that exploited where it could be exposed to similar circumstances of being hacked, right? Because that's what we hear on Ethereum and other some bridges were hacked, some smart contract was hacked, they drained the wallet. Is that a possibility here? And maybe that's not an OPCAT problem. That's just like how smart contracts are.
Yes. So in that way, as I said, it's a building block. And then how do you use this building block to build bigger contracts into your applications? Of course, because it brings more type of smart contract. Of course, the security depends on how you write it, right? It's like, hey, is let's say JavaScript or C++ or Rust, is this secure? I mean,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
a better question should be, hey, is this program written in this language, safe or secure,
yes, yes.
bug free, So OPCAT it just enables us to have the possibility to writing all kinds of smart contract. But whether this specific one is secure or not depends on, of course, it's like any other, you know,
Yes.
smart contract or software program. You need to write it in a way such that it cannot be, hopefully it cannot be attacked. But here's a good news, So in this regard is the same as any other smart contract platform out there. You have the security, breach potential. Okay, so here's the thing why OPCAT is good, better, enable the smart contract are better because on Bitcoin you can think about the smart contract. They're like a math functions, so-called in the terminology is functional or some say stateless. Basically, it's like a math function. You call it. For example, you have the square root or you have a quadratic equation, right?
Yeah.
You just doesn't matter. You run the same function on the same input. It will always give you the same output, regardless where it's run, how it's run, or when it's run. This is very different from Ethereum model. Ethereum they have
Yes.
this so-called global state. So every time, even I call the same contract, it's existing now. It doesn't mean if I call it, let's say, off chain on testnet is good now. It
Mhm.
doesn't guarantee it will succeed when I call it on main chain,
Yeah.
but which is not the case in Bitcoin world because of the UTXO model. So if you have a contract, you call it succeed now, it will succeed forever. It will succeed,
Interesting.
at the miner, laptop. It's just a better programming model because of the functional paradigm. It makes it more secure. in principle. Of course, exactly where one contract is good or not, that depends on how you write it, like any other contract.
Yeah, makes
No
sense.
different here.
It's almost like
But
if
on
I
principle, it's easier. Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like if my roof started to leak right now and I call the guy to fix it and he comes and he fixes it, but then it still leaks the next day. It's not the roof's problem, it's the guy who couldn't fix it properly, right? So the code, right, it's not about the smart contract, is did the guy do it correctly, right? Write the code correctly. So that makes a lot of
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah. Another way, just quickly add. So
Sure.
you have a leak, right? So, or you may say, you know, let's say you are building a house and sometimes it's just, it's shaky. There may be two reasons. First one, the house itself, you're building or like, let's say, not secure way, so it's constantly shaking or whatever. But then that's another one. You always look at the foundation, right? Because
Exactly.
Bitcoin give you a solid foundation. It's like you are building contracts on like a solid rocks, on good foundation. Ethereum, yeah, you can almost like it's building on like running sand. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the smart contract. That's why every single day you pretty much wake up and hear about some hacks. But I've been using OPCAT since like at least in production since 2019. We have hundreds, if not thousands, of
Wow.
incidents of contracts with OPCAT on either BCH or Bitcoin SV or some other blockchains. Uh, it's just us. We have never had one single instance of hack because of the OPCAT. Well, it's just very, very rare. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully that gives you some
No,
people
it
some
does. It does.
confidence.
You definitely dot your I's and cross your T's when you're writing that code, right? If you're now joining us, guy, we are sitting with Yahweh, who is the leading expert in the field of OPCAT. You guys are in for a treat. Thank you so much for joining. Do share the links. Tell your friends and family. OPCAT is a hot topic right now. A lot of people are wondering, how does it work? This is where you're going to find the answers to your burning questions. Okay, so what is the criticism surrounding OPCAT then? Right? If like, well, back in 2010, Satoshi, the man himself, turned it off, we've matured since. Like there must be some sort of criticism from the people who have the power to do this. And like they haven't been a vote as yet, has there? Like nobody really voted for consensus as yet. What is keeping us from not flicking the switch last year, year before, this year? What's going on? Right? Like there must be criticism, is what I'm trying to say.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So, from where I stand, I think I think most people are for it. I very rarely see people against it. I think it's I was even discussing this like a hot topic. This is like a very controversial topic on the Ordinal show. We have different theories. You know, you know. I think one aspect is it's like any other upgrade to Bitcoin, right? People just you can always try to say, hey, this attack surface, we have protected against that surface we have secured, but it's always let's say it's much harder to reason about secondary or even third order effect, right? Because then people always, one of the biggest concern I've heard about it, which is kind of legit, saying, hey, you never know unknowns, right? Because
Yeah.
what if you have an opcat and then I don't know, the Fed somehow can steal your Bitcoin, or
Yeah.
all your Bitcoin will be burned or something. Yeah, I think it's reasonable because in Bitcoin culture,
Yeah.
we tend to be conservative.
Yeah.
You don't want to. We're not like Ethereum. We can
Exactly.
upgrade every single day, and
Yeah.
proof of stake and everything. So I think I can get that point, but that's why I propose. I'm not a guy, or you're probably not a guy who's decide whether we should have OpCat or not. For me, we just want to offer more data points. We don't want to be this just to be like an emotional decision or just some kind of like an ego play. We
Yeah.
want to say, hey, these are the facts. Go play with this code. You can actually program all this, and if you can run on something like let's say fractal network, I think which is very good timing, because if you can prove all this kind of like a potential use cases and there's nobody got hacked because of OPCAT, I think that will send a very strong signal. Hey, maybe this is the time to add this, awesome opcode back into the mainnet.
Yeah, Yahweh, I'm about to say something probably very controversial here, but I think
Okay, here we go.
well, not nothing bad, but like I think Satoshi's original vision is what we like others are trying to do today and push these things forward, like OPCAT. have smart contract functionality, but the culture has changed along the years to somebody's personal preference. Where today it's kind of like isn't the same vision of what Satoshi had. I'm reading this book from Roger Ver, right? I don't know if people like him or not, but
Yeah.
the guy's been around forever. It's called Hijacking Bitcoin, and he explains it with great detail, with the links to everything, and you could quote Satoshi and what he said. And it was supposed to be larger blocks at some point. It was supposed to scale. It was supposed to have smart contracts. But like what you alluded
Yeah.
to, it's like, oh well, today the culture is not like that. How? Why? It's almost like when colonizers came over to the New World and they wiped out the Native Indians, and today we're born, we're like, well, who's the Native Indians? Right? That's forgotten. So this is what I'm trying to look at. Was there some sort of like monopoly centralization for the powers that be who had control at the time? He mentions a couple of camps I'm not going to say here, but how did the culture change from Satoshi's vision being that to the culture today of no, that's not supposed, and if you say it, you're going to be ridiculed. But yet Satoshi wanted this. So I don't understand.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, this is very controversial, as you rightly point out. At the beginning, if you go to read the Satoshi's early writings, I strongly recommend there's a book. I think it's called either the Book of Satoshi or the Writing of Satoshi. It's a very small book. You can finish in one day. It's on Amazon and everywhere else. Basically, it's not a it's not a book. It's more like a collection of all the quotes and writings and people know that Satoshi has put out in the public domain. So as you said, right, he has a vision. You know, it's a little bit different from what we are seeing in the BTC world today. It is, as you rightly point out, because since he left, I think there's some kind of like a cultural shift. From, let's say, hey, let's
100%.
not limit it in either in opcodes or block size. Let's just unleash the full potential. But later on, people come in because Bitcoin is just it's not like it's not like a gold. Right now people still are tinkering with it. I
Yeah.
cannot take out some protons or neutrons from the gold.
Yeah.
That is not gold. But Bitcoin is still like almost like a malleable, if I can use the word. People it's almost like what people decided to be. I mean, which may be different from the original Satoshi vision, but it is what it is.
It is what
People
it is,
then add
exactly.
more stuff on top of it, segue, and then taproot, and then people think, oh, don't ossify it. People saying, hey, but then how do you define? Why do you want to freeze it now instead of bring back the guy who invented it? He had
Exactly.
all these opcodes or all these features. If you want to ossify, maybe we should bring it back then ossify if you really want to be fulfill the guy's version. But then a culture is like a thing, is a malleable thing. I think since as you also agreed last year, ordinals brought back all the, like, let's say, development excitement back into Bitcoin. I think now is more. I think that's also the reason I said it's now being, let's say, resurfaced, because people are more. A lot of
Yeah.
people new, as you point out, they are new to this space. They come here, they don't understand all the history. They just say, hey, this is something
Yeah.
very cool, and I can use my today. I can buy some PFPs. I can launch
Right.
some meme coins.
Right.
Hey, what's next? Maybe I should be able to program the thing. It's
Yeah.
just add more things, add more experimentation to see, hopefully bring more transactions to Bitcoin, and also contributing to the security budget, because of the halving. Every halving, the miners are almost like almost decimated.
Yeah.
If we can help bring back the different transactions through applications that's impossible before and now possible because of OPCAT, I think why not? Yeah.
No, absolutely, absolutely. That's a lot of great insights over there. Um, yeah, so let's talk about something else that OPCAT could potentially do. Now, I'm seeing this surface around. I don't know how accurate, legit, or capable this is, but when it comes to like bridges, right? Could OPCAT help with like some form of decentralized bridges, which is a terminology I've never heard in my life up until like, I don't know, a couple months ago. And when I was doing my own due diligence on OPCAT, just to see for my own self and draw my own conclusions here, and not try to adopt what others are just saying on Twitter. But is something like a bridge could be decentralized with OPCAT operational codes
Yeah.
or no?
Yes, definitely.
Wow,
I think there may be multiple ways, but
wow,
one way to think about this is For people who have heard about so-called SPV proof, there's
Yeah,
like a Merkle tree. So
yeah.
one of the biggest use case for OPCAT is so-called you can do Merkle tree proof, right? Because Merkle tree is just hash cat, hash again, cat again, right?
Lightning
So
Network does
now
the
now
same
we have
thing. Lightning Network has Merkle
yeah
trees, I believe, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
I think you may use it. I'm not quite sure, but anyway, it's a generic technique. You can be used in a lot of scenarios. So in a bridge context, you can think about, right? Let's say you know once you have OPCAT, that enables to verify the you know so-called Merkle proof. Then what you can do is if you have another chain that's it also that has smart contract, for example, Fractal, right? And then you issue some tokens there, you can lock up the tokens on Fractal into some contract address, right?
Wow.
And then on Bitcoin world, if you have OPCAT, you can verify, hey, you can basically, if you have
Sorry,
OPCAT, you
Yahweh,
can,
when you said fractal, you mean as in fractal Bitcoin?
yeah, Fractal Bitcoin, for
Gotcha.
example, it's just
Gotcha.
one example, or Bitcoin Cash,
Gotcha.
let's say
Gotcha.
Bitcoin Cash.
Gotcha.
Okay. So if you have some tokens or native coins sent to some address that's locked up, on Bitcoin side, because you have OPCAT, you can verify the Merkle proof. You can know,
Wow.
hey, that's really the coin go to a certain address because you can use the proof of work and plus Merkle proof to know.
Wow.
So in a simple way, OPCAT enables script to know what's going on other blockchains. So in this way, when you mint new tokens, you don't have to. There's no central operator. You see what I mean? Because everything is done trustlessly. Same thing, same way. You can go back. Right? Once you have this, other blockchains can verify. Hey, in today's world, that's like you can do this trustlessly. I think when you when you pack into other token like sidechain or other blockchain, but you cannot pack back because there's no way to verify Merkle proof. But once you have this, I think it's very realistic. You are going to see so-called trustless bridge.
Guys,
I think
guys.
that's like the holy
Like,
grail when even in the
guys,
sidechain world.
listen, I'm
That's the
getting
holy grail.
goosebumps. I swear to God. Do you see it? I'm getting
Oh,
goosebumps. I'm not even joking. This really
okay.
gets
I'm,
my
I'm not
juices
pumping.
flowing. What's
All
that?
right. You're too pumped. Yeah.
I love this kind of stuff. This is crazy because now I know this is factual coming from a guy like yourself, right? Who's been working with
Yeah.
OPCAT for a number of years. The notion of decentralized bridges is going to be extremely interesting and fascinating to people.
Yes.
Yeah, because I think bridges
That's the
they
holy
have their
grail. Bridge. Yeah.
yeah, like bridges also they come with some issues too, right? Some side effects. Decentralized bridges. So decentralized bridges, that's going to be an absolute game changer. And yeah, I mean, we have Fractal Bitcoin and all these things and Bitcoin Cash. These Bitcoin compatible, chains, right? Side chains or whatever. This
Yeah.
is how they could use that, if ever be. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about Escrip smart contracts and how is that different with to OPCAT, or do they both work together? So we have OPCAT, we have the Escrip smart contracts. Could you combine Escrip smart contracts with OPCAT, or they don't work together? What's the differences between the two, please?
So OPCAT and all other opcode is just one layer, let's say below OPCAT, below Escrip. So because as I said before, I mean, in theory, you can build all these fancy applications like a vault or trustless bridge or Merkle tree verification. You can all do this if you're expert in opcodes. Go free to do it. You can do this. You can program this. But the thing is, it's going to be very difficult and very cumbersome. It's like you are programming Ethereum contract using, EVM opcodes. It's doable, but I wouldn't recommend it. It's almost impossible to do, especially for new developers. So Escript is one layer up. So basically, it's like almost like syntactic sugar that compiles down to all those opcodes, including opcat. We just make it much much easier. I think it's like 1,000 times easier to use opcats and other opcodes. Does this make sense? So it's
Yes, yes,
exactly the
yes.
same thing. It's just easier making 1,000 or even 10,000 times easier to program using opcat
Yes, yes,
and
no.
other opcodes.
Absolutely. And as I share my screen here, sorry, I'll take this off. I am on your website. Guys, go check it out. scrypt.io, escript.io. And in this section
Yeah.
here, I guess there's different variations of, and correct me if I'm wrong, this type of smart contract. I guess the P2PKH, and then we have something called Turing machines, and also you mentioned ZK rollup earlier in this interview.
Yeah.
What's the difference between the P2PKH, the Turing machines, and you already explained ZK rollups though, so maybe these two here we could focus on, the Turing and P2PKH. Which one's more advanced and different applications that they could utilize, if you don't mind?
Yeah. So Escrip, is a little bit special. In the sense that is similar to Solidity in the sense that it give you high level language, so you don't have to learn all the virtual machine opcodes. Okay, so in that sense, we are similar to Solidity, but I think it's technically is superior. Okay, this may be biased, but here's the thing: it's just JavaScript, more precisely TypeScript. So it's pretty much like JavaScript.
Okay.
It's just one JavaScript library you can download and start playing. What that means? What does this mean? On Ethereum or EVM world, you have Solidity, which maybe we think is big in the Web3 world, but if you compare to Web2, it's not even close. So I think the data I saw, I think from Electric Capital, so that's about 30,000 in the world. That's Solidity developers.
Yeah.
But guess how many JavaScript developers out there?
Exactly.
It's like 20 million.
100x.
So it's like
Yeah,
1,000 times more. Yeah. Yeah, it's like 1,000 times. So that means all these developers, they don't have to know anything about OPCAT or OPAD. They can just hear it's just another library they can download and install and immediate code or the things you just mentioned, right? Oh, it's a pay to public hash or roll up or vault or anything. To them it's just another Web2 library, like any other library they have used. They don't have to learn anything new. They can reuse all the existing tools and best practice, testing, IDE or web, like let's package manager. It's all the same to them. It's just like JavaScript, which is the easiest and most popular language in the entire world.
Exactly.
Not only in crypto.
There's no intimidation to try to learn a whole set of new language, right? For these guys, they already know it. It's a universal language, so to speak. So if they want to come and build some stuff here, it'll be a very smooth, easy transition for them. I love that. I love how you made it very simple for them, for coders. So I'm going to bring something up here, which we brought up Fractal a bit, and this was on their Twitter page. So Fractal Bitcoin, they did a poll for their community to vote. OPCAT is a potential significant improvement for Bitcoin script programmability. Technically, we're prepared to deliver OPCAT on Fractal Bitcoin and are considering activating it upon mainnet launch. So essentially, they did a poll to say, hey, to our Fractal Bitcoin community members, do you guys think we should turn on the switch for OPCAT? And as you saw, it was a landslide unanimous decision for yes. I wish Bitcoin Layer 1 will be that easy. So,
we could always wish.
Yeah. So what I want to ask you, Yahweh, is do you think this is a good move? And it might be a little bit of a biased question, but no, be honest here. Do you think this is a good move on the Fractal Bitcoin's team to want to put this on?
Yeah, definitely. I think this is one of the most brilliant move I've ever seen. A little bit of a background. Once I heard OPCAT, is potentially and at least being discussed to be enabled on Bitcoin, I'm like, should I build it now or not? Because to me, we cannot afford to build something which may or may not happen, in a number of months or even years, right? Then we run out of money. Okay, our runway is not that long. Okay, so we have to find some middle ground. Hey, if there's another chain which is almost the same with Bitcoin mainnet, that'd be like a perfect case. So I'm really, so that's when we kind of approached Fractal. We say, hey, guys, can you turn it on? So before we do anything, people may think it's a risky on Bitcoin mainnet.
Yeah.
Can we maybe, if you're one of the scaling solutions or programmable solutions, hey, just enable this, and then we can do all kinds of experiments, build all kinds of applications people talk about. If we can show here, oh, everything is working great, and we're building tons of different applications, DeFi, staking, AMM, whatnot, and then that will give a very strong signal, right? A bullish signal to, hey, maybe this thing should also be enabled on mainnet, because look at all this has been running. It's almost the same code, but then there's no risk there. But it also can cut both ways, right? Because if we want to be objective, if we do an experiment to verify our theory, to check our theory, it can also run bad. Let's say Fractal Bitcoin, in the worst case, have this OPCAT, and then this got hacked, and that hack is fundamentally unfixable, and then it basically is probably like a very bearish signal to enable this on mainnet. So I'm really interested to see how it plays out,
Very much so.
and we want to contribute to this. To me, is as you said, it's almost like a historical moment right now, because what we do,
Yeah,
you and me and all the people who's listening here,
yeah.
what we do on, let's say, this testing or experimental ground is going to play a major role. I hope to decide whether the OPCAT or some other even disabled opcode will be re-enabled on the Bitcoin mainnet. So it's our time
I love what you
to.
just said because this is what this is the same sentiment I was expressing. Like with Fractal Bitcoin, I believe like it's very close to what we have with Bitcoin. And I've been here, by the way, Yahweh. I was the first person to show people and educate them on BRC20 tokens on YouTube, at least.
Wow,
Yeah, so I've been here from the very
cool.
beginning, and I've witnessed this firsthand. And I'm so excited because we had other protocols come to market like Runes and other ones out there that couldn't really fix much because the programmability is missing, right? And
Yeah,
also, I feel as
yeah,
though we need faster blocks for when it comes for tokens on Bitcoin. And seeing Fractal Bitcoin that's being created by the Unisat team, who were the first people to support this market when nobody was interested, when it was like from the like just a dirt ground, and they
yeah,
built the foundation, the marketplace, the wallet, the first indexer, to come now. They are telling me, just like how I was here at the beginning, by them creating Fractal Bitcoin, they know firsthand, just like myself. Obviously, I'm not as smart as them. I don't know how to build, but they know what's needed to have a
yeah.
sustainable way to trade tokens. It just has to be cheap and fast. I don't care what anybody says, and programmable. Now, are we going to wait for consensus on layer one for this? Are we going to wait for them to increase the block size? That ain't going to happen. Maybe OPCAT will one day on layer one, I believe so, but increasing the block limits, that's never going to change, I don't think. So I feel as though they took matters into their own hands. And now, since, like, as I'm conducting this interview with you, Yahweh, the notion of decentralized bridges, that is wild. If they use that, I am going to make a prediction. If everything works the way the way we see the explanations on Fractal Bitcoin, 30-second block confirmations, cheap fees, programmability with OPCAT from that tweet I just showed you, I truly believe, like what you just said, this is the start of something big here. I can't really put my finger on it and say exactly what, but it's one of those gut feelings that I have. This is something very different here and needed, and it's actually addressing the issue that what we have on layer one. So I am very pleased to see Fractal Bitcoin. And now you're talking about decentralized bridges. It could be possible. I didn't even know that was a thing. So I'm even more bullish right now to see this go live. What do you think? What do you think of my sentiment there?
Okay, so as an appreciation to be invited to this show, I'm happy to share. I think somebody already reached out to us. Hey, please help us to build some kind of like a trustless bridge for at
Okay.
least for stable coins.
Okay.
So it's ongoing.
Nice.
This may sound like shitting, but
Is that
yeah,
breaking
but
news? Is that first of its kind breaking news? You never said
yes,
that.
yes. It's like last time I was on Ordinals, we announced the TK Stockwell
Right.
collaboration. But yeah, definitely somebody is working with us to build trustless bridge. So to bring stable coins from other existing stable coins onto Fractal from other blockchains like USDT or USDTC. I mean, of course, some research still needs to happen, but
Sure.
in
Sure.
in
But the point,
concept,
yeah. So,
yeah,
ladies and
it's
gentlemen,
possible.
boys and girls who are watching this, we have on Twitter, we just had breaking news, first time ever dropped on this show. This is the Alpha Alfonso show. On Twitter, we have 461 people. Guys, we just had breaking news. There are talks with the main man himself and another team that we can't disclose that information, are going to be working on trustless decentralized bridges when it comes to stablecoin. And is this going,
Yes,
I don't know if I could ask this, but you're referring to a Fractal or something else?
Fractal Bitcoin,
Wow.
yes, because
Bullish!
I have OPCAT. Yeah,
Bullish, bullish, ladies and gentlemen. You just heard it here first. So that is amazing news. Thank you so much for sharing that here with us. Yeah, that's giving me
let's
goosebumps.
just give you a sense. That's just one of the 20 or so teams that reach out to us after we talk about OPCAT. They're all
Amazing,
building
amazing,
different
amazing.
applications that's impossible before on Bitcoin mainnet. They are now bring it onto Fractal first.
Yeah. This brings me to my next question, and this actually is my last question that I have, guys. Please, I promised Yahweh this will be under 1 hour. We're at the 50-minute mark, so if you don't mind, do drop your questions now in the YouTube live chat or in the Twitter live chat. After this question and his answer, I'll be coming there, and hopefully I can get your question answered. So the question is, will OPCAT work better on Bitcoin Layer 1? And I'll tell you why I'm asking this, or a Bitcoin-compatible network like, say, a Fractal. The reason why I ask that is because, and this is what I say, and you could debunk me if you want, and I won't take offense to it because you are the man, but I would say this, right? And I'm talking about when it comes to trading tokens. I think for a network effect, you really need cheap, fast, programmable, scalable, secure, right? Features. On Bitcoin, let's just say OPCAT's enabled. That's amazing. It'll have a market there. It's the purest form. It's layer 1 native assets, all these things. But if transactions are going to go up freaking high, like we've seen it with ordinals already, if it's going to take, on some cases, 35 minutes to confirm, right, on average 12, I just don't see how that's going to be, like, for these high-frequency sort of, like, you know, applications, right, like trading and just whatever, degen stuff, which is the reason why Bitcoin is getting this love. From a bunch of degens trading monkeys and frogs, right? So I don't know if OPCAT will be a best fit for that application, which I think it'll have a lot of other applications for layer 1.
Yeah.
But once again, I'll ask you, and you go ahead, please. You could nail me to a crosshair. Do you think OPCAT is better suited for a framework, let's just say like Fractal Bitcoin or layer 1, or you can make an argument for both?
Okay, so is the way I see it is they work together. Okay, this is the way this is just my gut feeling. I have, if I were going to do it, so even as you rightly pointed out, even you have OPCAT enabled on mainnet, people are not going to, let's say, do high frequency trading even with AMM style, because of the fees and block size and block time. It's not like as fast as, let's say, Fractal or even Ethereum or Solana, because that's one of the biggest complaint, for let's say traders, coming into Bitcoin mainnet. But here's the thing, you can, the Bitcoin mainnet has some cons, but also have pros, right? Pros, for example, biggest liquidity, biggest assets, and also most secure network, right? And biggest consensus. So one way you can think about is, hey, once you have OPCAT, you issue your assets, your tokens on the mainnet. And then because the OPCAT enabled secure bridging or other mechanism, you can take it to other, blockchains securely or layer 2 or whatnot. It's just, you can
Gotcha.
anchor your most precious assets on the main because that's secured by the biggest hash power. So you are confident it's going to be the most secure. But then if you want to do actions on it, you can do through some kind of roll up or some bridge to other places.
Right.
Once you are done with them, you can trustedly bridge them back. That's another way to look at it, right? Is, if you're something that's high frequency, you unless you scale the layer 1, you probably want to do it somewhere else. But here's the way, right? You can, with OPCAT, you don't have to, I think it will reduce a lot of the trust assumptions, which is still improvement, versus just issuing this token on some other blockchain. And then, there's not much liquidity and people don't trust that kind of assets. Is good. For me, I would say they work together. You issue the tokens here and do some low frequency stuff like staking.
Yeah.
And then if you want to do some kind of fancy stuff, you can go somewhere else. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, man. This is just very refreshing, very refreshing conversation here as we have more people rolling in here on YouTube. Guys, I am taking your questions right now. We have Shizzy from Ordinals Revolution in the house. He's a big fan of yours as well, Yahweh.
Thank you.
Obi-Wan says, good morning. Thank you guys for joining. Where are your questions, guys? I'll ask probably one or two. It's getting to the 1 hour mark. Okay, so there's one here, Yahweh, and this individual is asking, so you mentioned that how you are familiar, you came from BSV, is that correct? From BSV, right? Okay.
I was in BCH, but then Bitcoin SV, as I work on some
yeah. So
MVC
other Bitcoin,
and all kind of different Bitcoin-like chains, yes.
Gotcha, so compatible Bitcoin of chains and framework.
Yes.
What is the difference between something like, because what I would hear is, and I can see where he's coming from, people would say, well, hey, if we already have OPCAT enabled on these other chains, why would we need to enable it on something that's new? And just to give you a little bit more insights, and I think where he's coming from is, I believe I was speaking to somebody who's also from BSV some days ago, and they say that how it's actually a little bit different. I believe the BSV has a mining pool, and you cannot, like, Fractal, they're doing a merge mining with FB and Bitcoin. I don't think
Yeah.
BSV has those capabilities for whatever reason. Is it different down there, like the limitation wise on BSV compared to what Fractal is trying to do here?
Yeah, I think the easiest way to look at this is, BCH or BSV is or Dogecoin or Litecoin. Yeah, it's its own chain right now. There's nothing, common between, all the chains, the assets, and everything is different. I mean, except the technology is very similar. Like they have OPCAT, they have UTXO, Bitcoin script, you know, proof of work. But then Fractal and some other, let's say layer twos or whatever you call it, is anchored or stacks, right? It's anchored to Bitcoin because of the, you know, either technically because of the merge mining and
Right.
also let's say economically because of the people who are building this thing. They really depend on the Bitcoin mainnet, right? For example, Unisat, as you point out, right? Because they are really in the game. They have skin in the game,
Big time.
right? So that's the biggest difference. I think it's
Yeah, yeah,
technically very similar between all these chains,
yeah.
Dogecoin, Litecoin, BPSH, but then economically, I think the Fractal people they have more, skin in the game to actually scale or make Bitcoin more scalable, programmable,
Okay,
because it's
okay.
vital to that business. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. Like, how I answer that to people, and again, they think I'm the expert. I tell them, please, don't insult the real experts out there. I'm not. I'm just trying to learn. But what I tell them is, I think at the time when BSV, came out, what was that 2018, whatever it was, 2017,
18, yeah.
yeah, 2018.
18, yeah.
Um, at the time, there was not the notion of tokens being traded on mainnet. Today, or last year, that's the case right now. So now we are firsthand experiencing the severe, painful limitations that it has. And I feel like what you
Yeah.
said, the guys like Unisat who has skin in the game from like the ground zero day one, they
Yeah.
are at the helm here. So I think it's different in that regard too as well. That's what I tell them too. We do have a super chat here, guys. This is the last question, I guess. This is coming from Harris G. $77.70, bro. You're crazy. 777. He knows that's my favorite number, so he does 777. Okay, so he says, "Hey Yahweh Lu, thank you for your time and all your efforts. What's something you wish people would ask you, but they haven't asked? Maybe there's a question that I didn't ask you that you may have wanted to arise, or a question from the audience. Is
It's
there any?"
always a very, very good question. Okay. So, I mean, you're asking all the good questions because looks to me you have spent a lot of time doing all the background work,
I am giddy.
homework. You
I
have
am
really,
excited. I'm just super naturally passionate and excited. But yeah, go on.
I would say if I have some time more to share, I would be curious. For me, I'm mostly like, as you said, I'm like a developer. I'm more like a technical side. I really want to see people's opinions or ideas. How do we move, this OPCAT closer to activation or not? Or how do we decide? We want to, people keep, I think, the public discussion, and then we can somehow find a clearer path to see whether we should activate this thing or not, or if we're going to activate, what's a roadmap. We really want to. I want really want to get ideas from gentlemen like all you guys who is listening here. What are the best way to push this forward? I mean, of course, I'm not saying it definitely has to be activated. What I'm just saying, how to push this discussion forward. It's like any kind of a scientific theory. Right? You want to get a data point by experimenting. So, what is criteria and what's the best way, to decide? And if we decide is hopefully is yes, then what's the concrete steps or even roadmap or even let's say timeline for this to going forward? Because for a lot of people, let's say Unisat or even you, right? I know you're also doing some projects. I'm doing project. We for projects business, we want to have some kind of a, I wouldn't say absolute certainty, but at least we know what's the roadmap, right? It's like you go to other blockchains, right? You want to know what feature is going to, at least you have timeline. Then you can plan accordingly, right? Because I cannot wait here.
Yeah.
It's just, hey, we hope everything of our survival depends on OPCAT being activated, and then we are not certain when it's going to be. We probably run out of money before, if it ever gets activated. So we want to have more ideas or opinions. Hey, let's
That's how we do
discuss
it.
this.
Exactly.
Hey, not only for people who OPCAT, maybe, hey, bring people who are not a fan of OPCAT yet. Hey, let's say what, hear the opposition position, if you have to say, or maybe have a debate, or maybe have some discussion, civil discussion. I think that was something I really look forward to. Yeah.
I was about to say that. I think the best way to go about doing this is to have open discussions like this with media personnels like myself and with
Not personal attacks.
What's that? Yeah, exactly. Not ad hominem
Not
personal
personal
attacks.
attacks.
I agree. Thought leaders in the space and also proven professionals like yourself. That's the best way to do it. And I think once it's out in the open, we'll actually get to the root of what needs to be done. And I think we could form consensus there. But look, this has been an amazing, one of my better live stream interviews I've ever done. I've been doing this for 7 years, and I really mean that. This is some serious alpha here. Guys, yeah, I just want to say let's all thank Yahweh for taking the time out of his busy schedule and coming here on the show. He is the man of the moment right now. He's doing a bunch of things behind the scenes, so let's give him a round of applause, guys. Go check them out on Twitter as well, Escrip. Their account's getting a lot of attention too. People are getting much more fascinated and interested in the world of OPCAT, and he is the man when it comes to that. So you know what, guys? There really much left to say other than until the next live stream.